It's probably a shock the first time you attend a church like this in the first week of Advent. I know many of us here did not come from a long line of, cradle Episcopalians or Anglicans. A lot of us are coming into this tradition relatively recently. I know the first time that I went to an Anglican church the first week of Advent, still discovering the tradition for the first time. It was kind of strange. You're seeing the hustle and the bustle of the holidays all around you, the expectation of the Christmas gatherings that will happen in homes everywhere. You're seeing stores full of angels and shepherds and lights and manger scenes. You're hearing songs on the radio about the wise men and the joy of Christmas night. So it's a bit of a shock when you come to church and hear readings that make you feel like the whole world is ending. It's this very apocalyptic, the moon is going to turn to blood. Everything is falling apart around us. The whole world is coming to an end. It gets pretty dark pretty quickly. But for us as Anglicans and for our brothers and sisters in the Orthodox and the Lutherans and the Roman Catholic traditions, Advent celebrates the expectation, the anticipation to the Messiah's coming, his Advent. But the key qualifier in this, especially as we absorb and digest the readings over the next few Sundays, is that we're not just celebrating his coming 2,000 years ago. It's not just the 8-pound, 6-ounce newborn baby Jesus that we're talking about. We're talking about his second Advent as well. The magnificent return of the bridegroom to meet his bride, you and I, the church. The King is coming in all his glory. I think all of you would agree that there's something about our human nature that is opposed to any kind of delay. We hate waiting in line, right? We want to skip any time that causes us to delay gratification. We want to jump directly to the end of the waiting, to the thing that we're waiting for. We took the kids to Disney World a few months back, and at one of the parks they just opened a new section of the world of Pandora. It's an entire section of the park, especially devoted to the movie Avatar. It's amazing to see the floating islands and the waterfalls and the intensely colored buildings. You feel like you've been transported to another planet as soon as you walk into this section of the park. I think that's kind of the idea. It's the crown jewel of Disney's investment is a ride that they put right in the middle of this area. And it's puts you on the back of this pterodactyl-like creature. I don't even remember what it's called now, but you feel like you're flying around the world of Pandora. It's crazy. This thing is a marvel. Rows upon rows of these motorcycle-like seats stretching up 5 to 6 stories tall. The whole thing is in 3D, and you're sitting on this thing, and it's moving, and it feels like it's breathing. It's really creepy, actually. This thing is amazing. Luckily, we had some foresight, and we got what's called a fast pass, like 6 months in advance, so that we could skip the standby line. Just for fun, as we were there during the park, I checked my little Disney World wait time app throughout the day to see what the real line, the standby line, was to this ride. When we got there, it started at like 45 minutes, first thing in the morning, 45 minutes automatically. And I would check it periodically, and it grew from 45 to 65 to 85 minutes. To finally, at one point in the day, the line was 4 hours long just to ride this ride. 4 hours. Let that sink in. It's like 98 degrees outside. The park's only open for like 8 hours. And people are waiting in line for 4 hours. I don't know that I would wait in line to see a resurrected Elvis and Johnny Cash sing a duet together for 4 hours. I would not even wait that long. As 21st century Americans, we don't like waiting for things. And to be honest, we don't really have to do it that often. Our culture has grown accustomed to instantaneous delivery in every aspect of our lives. There's rarely a moment in our day-to-day existence where we are required to wait for anything. Food or information, communication. It's all instantaneous. And any kind of delay just, completely freaks us out. I'm sure that, this is sort of a millennial issue, I think, but I'm sure many of you have gotten upset at your phone, right? Because the text message won't send fast enough, or the email won't go, or you can't pull up Google or Facebook or whatever. Waiting. Preparation. There's two things that Advent offers us that makes us completely uncomfortable. It's these two things: waiting, preparation. People of Israel were longing for God's rescue plan to be enacted, but they were helpless to bring it about. It had been over 600 years since a king from the line of David had sat on the throne in Jerusalem. Their kingdom had been fractured. Their ancestors had become idolatrous. And eventually their temple and their city had all been destroyed. 20 centuries ago, the Jews felt like they were waiting forever for rescue. They wanted freedom once again. They wanted autonomy from the ruling hand of a pagan emperor. They wanted the ability to govern themselves and worship their God. And they believed that a Messiah would be the one to spark a revolution, to lead them to liberty, reunite the kingdom that they had lost through their own rebellion and rejection of the covenant. But of course, Christ comes and has a completely different agenda, one that supersedes earthly kingdoms and political powers, an agenda of the reunion of God and man. The new covenant in His blood that will once again bring us close to the Creator. But many Jews had created a list of their own priorities. Politics came first. Redemption of their souls was a distant second. I think oftentimes our expectations stand in the way of God's intentions. And more than this, I think the waiting caused many of them to lose sight of the real issue. It wasn't the fact that they no longer had a kingdom to call their own. The real issue was that the idolatry of their ancestors had been replaced by hypocrisy and empty religious practice. Jesus comes and He exposes the religious leaders for this. He calls them out on their exploitation of the poor, their willingness to sacrifice their principles for political power, their failure to convey the grace of God and the love of God to the people. It gives the religious leaders a pretty hard time, for good reason. But they weren't ready. They were waiting, but they didn't even understand what they should have been hoping for. Christ came to set His people free, but not from the earthly authority of the Romans. That would continue. But from the power of sin and death and hell. So Advent, as we begin this Advent season, it thrusts us into a curious spot between two worlds. We remember the years and decades and centuries that the expectation for the Messiah built among the faithful so many years ago. Come, thou long expected Jesus. But we also wait for Him to return. And with penitent hearts, we prepare ourselves for the Holy One to come again. Amen.